Hello everyone, Helgari here. I'm the original author and lead designer of the Wabbajack project. And today we are going to take a little look at how to build a mod list with Wabbajack and how to get started. So we're just gonna walk through a couple installation of a couple different plugins so you can see how it works, and we'll go from there. Now, the first thing you want to do is install Mod Organizer 2. So download a copy of Mod Organizer 2, open it up with 7-zip, extract those files into a folder, and now we have an install of MO2, and this will just take a bit to install. There's a lot of files here, so it takes a little bit of time to extract at times, but that's okay. We'll just let it run here. So while we go through this, I'll talk a little bit about the process here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up Mod Organizer. You always want to select the portable mode. That is very important. So let's do portable mode. And then now that it opens, select Skyrim Special Edition or whatever game. We currently support Fallout 4, Skyrim Special Edition, and Fallout New Vegas are the ones that I personally have tested. The other main games, probably not Morrowind, but the others probably work just fine. Give them a try if you want. A Skyrim Legendary Edition also works. So click Know the Tutorials here. So now here we go. We have our basic setup of Mod Organizer 2. So as you see here, we don't have any plugins installed. I have some tools here. Those were auto-detected, but we're good to go. So the first thing we're going to do now is we're going to create our profile. So the profile name is going to be the same name as the mod pack. So we'll call this tutorial mod list. I'd like to use the term mod list because mod pack implies something different in a lot of the gaming world. This is a mod list. We're not actually copying any files from the creators of the mod list, their machine, to the user's machine. We're just creating an install list in essence. So we'll call this tutorial mod list and rename our profile to that. And then we'll go ahead and exit. We probably want to do this the first time. I have had some issues the first time you load up Mod Organizer, does some setup, and Wabbajack can get a little bit freaked out by that. So let's now start Wabbajack. And what we're going to do, it'll warn you about this. Windows has protected your PC. It's fine. We should probably sign the executable at some point, but it gets a little unhappy because, hey, it's an open source project, right? Okay, so here we go. The first thing we want to do is we want to point this at the profile. So go into your MO2 folder and then go to Profiles. See, we have Tutorial Mod List. That matches what we had before. And then click the modlist.txt. And as you see here, it filters properly. So you can't click the wrong file. Just make sure you're in the right folder. And we're going to click that. And now we click Begin. Now, the first time it runs, it's going to index a bunch of files. This takes some time. Especially because it does index the game files as well. We should probably add some progress bars to this at some point, but right now the machine is going through and building up a cache, and you can see this here, this VFS cache.bsun is a file that contains all the information about all the files in both your game folder and in the Mod Organizer 2 folder. So that's what it's doing right now is when you see these old scripts.zip and the BSAs, it is actually going through, disassembling every single one of these BSAs and looking for all the files in those BSAs. And the reason for this is that what Wabbajack is going to do when it goes to when we compile the mod list is it's going to look at your MO2 directory and try to find all the files that you need to get the mod list set up the way you currently have it. From there, it's going to look at all the downloads that you have in your downloads folder and try to find a way to rectify those. Try to find some way to build your MO2 folder from what is currently in your MO2 download folder. And so this process can take some time. Now, so there's a couple things that it's doing right here. As I said, it's going to go through all the files in both your game folder and in your MO2 folder, and it's going to create hashes. So we use a cryptographic hash, SHA-256, which is basically a way of turning the contents into of a file into a unique identifier. There's some chance that you could generate the same identifier for two different files, but it's extremely rare and it's highly unlikely. So what we can do is we can reduce the entire contents of that file, not so much the contents, but we can create a signature, a unique signature, so that we don't have to compare the contents of the file. Some of these files are pretty big. These files could be upwards of 2-3 gigabytes or something. And so if we were to try to compare them byte for byte, that would just take a while. So as you see here, it got done with the BSAs and it's moving on to the other parts of the Skyrim directory. So it's going through all the scripts now and stuff like that. And all it's doing for each one of these files is capturing the name of the file, the size of the file, the last time it was modified, and creating that hash. So that when we rerun this, we can look at things like those BSAs. And if the BSA hasn't been modified since the last time we saw it, then we know, you know what, we don't need to go and rehash the contents. All that cache data is the same. And I'm mostly just talking about this because we're sitting here waiting. So once that we have that cache all built up, that is a one-time deal. The next time we run Wabbajack, as long as this VFS cache.bson file is right next to the Wabbajack, it's in the same folder, it'll pick that up and read it in and use that information to kind of prime the cache, if you will. It won't have to disassemble these BSAs every time. It'll just continue. It'll just load up the data and continue. Now, this file does get fairly large at times, but just leave it. It'll be fine. You see here, it gets bigger each time one of these archives gets done. It gets a little bit larger as that data is loaded in. So where are we going from there? Oh yeah, so next time you run this, if just the new files that you've added, any new files you've downloaded or installed will have to be analyzed, but not again after that. It's kind of a one-time deal. If that cache ever gets corrupted, you can delete it. You can copy that cache around. That's completely fine too, and it will just it'll maintain the cache. So if you have another, you have Wabbajack in another place or that sort of thing, it's fine to just leave that file around. This staged files is kind of a temporary storage space. We need a place to put the files that are inside the BSA. If you are running this on another machine, first of all, the number of CPUs here will differ. We have one worker thread per execution thread in your CPU. So I have a 6-core machine with hyperthreading, so that's 12 threads. Simple enough. On your machine, this process may take longer than mine. Right now, we've probably been going for a couple minutes. It's going to continue to take a little bit. Feel free to skip past this in the video if you want. I've noticed the voices files are the biggest. This applies to anything that has a lot of voice information. There's a lot of really tiny files. And for every one of those files, we have to extract them out of the BSA. We have to analyze them. We have to delete the file. We have to go to the next one, that sort of thing. And that just takes time. It's possible that we will speed this up in the future. But like I said, it's a one-time deal. And that's it. So when the time comes to actually, and when this process is done, what you'll see is that the next thing it will do is it will look at everything in the ammo2 folder and try to find a match, right? So it'll look at, for instance, modorganizer.exe. So it'll go to your downloads folder and look for an archive that contains modorganizer.exe. Not exactly. It'll look at the hash of modorganizer.exe and try to compare that to a hash in a archive. Now remember I said those hashes are unique, right? So it doesn't matter if you rename the file or you move it or you put multiple mods in the same folder or anything, because we compare the contents of the files and not the names of the files, you can really move them around and do whatever you want. Now, the other things that'll happen is we do support binary patching. And so if you have an ESP that you've cleaned, or that maybe you've converted from old RIM to SSE, or you've done, removed some fixes, consistency patches, that sort of thing. You've changed the ESP. What Wabbajack will say is like, okay, we didn't find an exact content match, but you know what? Foo.esp is also, there's a foo.esp in your downloads, one of your archives in your downloads folder. And it'll do some comparisons to try to see which one it thinks is the closest to what is in the archive. And then it'll create a binary patch. And a binary patch is just a way of taking two files and trying to figure out what's changed, right? Did we just change a number here? Did we delete a record and so all the other records are shifted over? There's an algorithm for that called BSDiff, which is what we use. Has no connection to Bethesda or BSA files. This just happens to have BS at the front of it. But it's just an algorithm for finding changes in binary files. And it's fairly efficient for small files, which is what a lot of ESPs are, is that they're fairly small. So if you do an ESL conversion, there's, you set the flag on the ESP to turn it into an ESP flagged ESL, right? That's like 2 bytes of change, right? So the binary differ just looks at that and says, wow, okay, all we need to do is take the ESP file, we need to tweak these 2 bytes, and boom, we now have the output file. So Wabbajack will discover that and we'll create that binary patching situation. And like I said, this takes a really long time for this voices en file. So we'll just let this continue to run for a little bit. We may pause the video here if we or cut something out here if this takes too much longer. But all right, so that's binary patching. The other things we want to talk about is something else that Wabbajack can do is it treats archives as if you have a BSA archive included exactly in your mod list, then that's fine. The hashes match and it's just going to work, right? If you've done something to that archive, let's say it was originally an archive, and here we go. So I'll come back to that because finally this kicked off, right? And like I said, it took a long time, but now everything's hashed and we're good. Now, what you're going to see is this is a common mistake. This is a common mistake I make. And what we'll see here, and we'll even load this up in just a second once this completes. It's currently logging everything that went wrong with that install, and it's a lot. Because what you're going to notice is if we go here to our downloads folder, it's empty, right? So what is the one thing that we've installed so far that is not in our downloads folder? MO2, right? We have Mod Organizer 2, and we didn't put Mod Organizer 2 in our downloads folder. So it tells us here, it's like, here are all these files, and it's exiting because there's no way to compile these files. So if we close Wabbajack here, and by the way, there's this log file, and if you pop this open in Notepad, Notepad++, you'll see here, running compilation stack. So real quick, the compilation stack is just a set of rules. So Wabbajack is built on a set of rules. There's roughly 25 of them right now. And it just starts dropping these files through the rules. And the first rule that matches determines what happens to the file. So we ignore certain things. Like one of the top rules is anything that's in the log folder in MO2, just ignore it. We don't care about it at all. It's not relevant in any situation. So any log files will match that rule and they'll get thrown out. And then it falls down to the next rule and it falls down to the next. So what this says is that all these files went through our compilation stack, the stack of rules. It fell all the way through and fell out the bottom. And then Wabbajack doesn't know what to do with it, right? So these are all things that don't match. So why don't they match? The thing to think about when you get an error like this is, where did these files come from? These files came from MO2. Do we have the MO2 archive in our downloads? No, we don't. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our Mod Organizer 2 7-zip and copy that into our downloads folder. Now you're like, but that doesn't make sense, right? I mean, we didn't download that from the Nexus, right? But that's the way what Wabbajack expects. And we also need a meta file. So these meta files are created by Mod Organizer. And they're just information that allows Mod Organizer to know how to track these files. So if we open it up, we can see some information here. Like it was created from different places. But actually, I'll tell you what we'll do instead. We're going to show how to, so you could just copy this information. But for files that you manually downloaded, you won't have this meta file. So what we're going to do is we're going to load up Mod Organizer. And once we do that, we'll see this file in our downloads directory. So we go to our downloads directory and we see this little thing here, which is Mod Organizer 2 saying, I don't know what this file is. Now, what's nice is there's this really nice thing called query info. So we click here and just right click on it and click query info, and it's going to go off and it says, you know what, your game is Skyrim Special Edition. This file name here has a lot of information about how to get stuff from the Nexus. I'm going to go run out to the Nexus and see if I can figure out where this file came from. And what do you know? It found it. Now, you won't have this good of an experience if you're not doing a Skyrim Special Edition game. Because Mod Organizer 2 is like you're running Fallout New Vegas. Like, why would you use a file from Skyrim Special Edition, right? And they only upload Mod Organizer 2 to the Skyrim Special Edition Nexus page. So in that case, what you can do, and we have this on our GitHub repo, there is a file called recipes that have a lot of information about what you need to do to configure common but weird mods. Mod Organizer 2 is one of those. All you really need is a meta file with this information in it. In the general section, you need game name of Skyrim SE. This is the mod ID, and this is the file ID. And this file ID may change with each new release, but whatever. If you're doing another game, just create this meta file, and there we go. Okay, so that's Mod Organizer 2. Let's go back here and rerun Wabbajack. And we're going to select our mod list again, and it remembered where we were at, so we're good to go. And when we click run, remember, it loads the cache, it cleans the cache, it says, it found out we have a new archive in our download folder, and so it's going to kick that off, and it's analyzing that. This doesn't take too long to do, and once that is done, it will continue with compilation. And this time, we should see pretty much everything match up, and we should get a exe here called tutorial modlist. So the name of the executable when it's done is going to be called tutorial modlist. So there we go. It finished, and now it's asking for me to log in. It pulled up a page here on another screen that you can't see. I'm going to click authorize on that, and then it found I think it found a README. It's patching the README. Mod Organizer 2 does create some temporary files, and I think we'll find a way to make it so it doesn't want to patch that. But anyway, once it's all done, it creates a tutorial called tutorial modlist. And here you go. This is the file you need to install just this. I mean, it's just Mod Organizer 2. That's it. Okay, so that's Mod Organizer 2. Let's close this down. So now what's the next thing we want to do? Well, the next thing I want to do is I want to install SKSE, right? So I'm going to go here I'm going to go to SKSE here on this other screen, and I'm going to download the current version of that. And let's see here, we're going to open this here, and then we are going to go to our downloads folder here, and I'm going to just pop SKSE into the downloads. Now, so we have another file here, SKSE. Now, if I click query info, this is not a Nexus mod, right? This comes from the SKSE website. So what we need first is that meta file. Now, the meta file is created if you query info or if you install it through Mod Organizer. Now, we need to do two things. We need to copy the DLLs out of the SKSE into our game folder, but we also need to install the scripts. So we're going to go ahead and install the scripts first. We'll go through here. That's a tutorial thing. Set the data directory. Good. Now we have that's a little strange. Refresh. I don't know how that got renamed rewrite. Huh, not sure why that was called that, or called overwrite. Anyway, SKSE. So now we have our SKSE folder, and if we see here in our file tree, we have all of our scripts and stuff for SKSE, so we're going to enable that. The other thing we would do, if we go in here, we see, okay, we have an SKSE meta file, all right? Edit it with Notepad. Now, we don't have a way to figure out like how we're going to install this, right? This is just an archive from a random place. Well, what you can do instead is type direct URL equals. So this has to be is case sensitive. So direct and then capital URL, and then what you want to do is copy in the direct path to that executable. So if I just right click and copy link as in my browser, you can go back here in this and paste this in, and that's a direct link to the 7-zip file. Right? Now we click save. Now what I would do in in a normal install is I would open this up in 7-zip, and I would open this here, and I would put these 3 files into my Skyrim game folder. Now, that's in a normal install. That'd be a normal case, but I already have those files in there. Okay, so now let's run Wabbajack. And we can actually, after the first time we use Mod Organizer, it should be just fine to leave it open while we run Wabbajack. So we're going to open it up again, click Modlist, click Begin. It's going to load the VFX cache, and then it's going to say, we have another archive, which it found. Now, okay, so it does have a problem here. Probably best to just shut it down in that case. I should look into a way of maybe fixing it so we don't have that problem of the log files being used, but whatever. We'll run this, updates the cache, and then here we go. So it found all that, it builds it, and it's done already, right? So once that VFS cache is done, it does build pretty fast. In fact, from a cold start, let's just do that. Everything's indexed. We hit Modlist, we hit Begin. And done. So 10 seconds. It's not bad. So what's going to happen is those files that need to go into the game folder file are actually going to be, once the user install these, there's going to be another folder here called game folder files. And when you open that up, those are the files that they need to put into their Skyrim game directory, right? And so those SKSE DLLs will be in there. But there we go, that's built. So then, for normal Skyrim mods, let's just go here again, and let's do Mod Organizer 2, and let's see. So we have some. We're ready to install a mod, right? So in the case of, let's say, so this is a good one. I'm just pulling some random stuff from the Lexi mod list. So if you open this up, one of Dynamic Equipment Manager. So I'm just going to go here and I'm going to select Mod Manager Download and hit download. And as you see, it downloads here. And then I'm just going to click install, activate, boom, that's done. Wabbajack is going to pick that up. It's going to have all the information it needs. Because if we go back here to our downloads, here it says Dynamic Equipment Manager meta file. And if we open this, what we're going to see is that mod ID, file ID, it already found all that information we need, right? So right off the bat, there we go. So that works. Now, the one thing that we have in this mod list example that I was using is, if we open this in Explorer, we're supposed to, actually not there, let's do file tree. We're supposed to edit this thing here. So this is Dynamic Equipment Manager. It basically, in certain situations, will equip or unequip items based on the situation. So if we open this JSON file, I didn't want Visual Studio to do this, but whatever. This mod pack is saying manage helmet false. So we don't want this touching our helmet. Okay, so we save that. We'll exit out of this, close. There we go. And now, if we close this down and rerun Wabbajack, what you'll see is it picks all that up just fine. Once again, it's going to find that one archive, index it, boom. And what you're going to see when this goes through is that it's going to have another patch file. It has another patch file for Dynamic Equipment Manager SSE.json. So it detected that we edited that JSON file and then built a binary patch on that JSON file. So once this is installed on the user's computer, boom, it just works, right? That's huge. Now, this works for a lot of different stuff. Another thing you can do here, and I'm just going to go through a couple things real quick and explain how they're handled, right? If you have a new folder here, tools, right? In this, I could have like Xedit or Bethesda or CAO, the Cathedral Assets Optimizer, right? For each one of those, you would download them manually, put the archive into the MO2 download folder, extract their contents into here, and then go into Mod Organizer 2 and right-click on that query info thing, and Mod Organizer is going to detect where they came from on the Nexus. And then all of these folders will be filled out with the tools the user needs once they install this mod list. Boom. It's just really handy. So that binary patching works for almost everything, right? It'll work just fine for ESPs that you've created or that sort of thing. The thing it doesn't work for is large BSA. So there's currently an upper size limit of about 200 megs of what we can binary patch because it just takes a long time and a lot of memory to do the patching. Um, I might expand that in the future so it doesn't run into problems, but right now we're limited to that size. Now, um, so in the case of BSAs, when there's been a big change between two BSAs, like the BSA itself has changed in some way, instead of binary patching the BSA, there's one of three things that can happen with BSAs. You can either extract them, right? So you installed a mod, it had a BSA, you ripped it apart and put the loose files into the folder, right? Maybe you used CAO or you used Mod Organizer 2 to do that extraction. At any rate, you extracted a BSA. In that case, Wabbajack will detect those files existing inside a BSA, inside an archive. And during the install process, it'll extract that BSA, rip it apart, and install the loose files into the folder. It can do that, it can detect that because this analyzation process that it goes through initially is deep. It goes into archives inside archives, and BSAs are considered archives just like zip files and 7-zip files and all that stuff, right? The other thing you can do with BSAs is you could pack them. So 3D NPC is a common case for this, right? You can drastically improve your load times by taking all the loose files of 3D NPCs and shoving them into a BSA. And you may do that with CAO, right? So CAO has done a bunch of optimizations and shoved those files into a BSA. Wabbajack will also detect that. It'll find the BSA, say, I have no clue where this came from. Let me look at the internals. It goes through all the internals of the BSA and says, you know what? All of these files, I can figure out where these files came from, and it will build that BSA on installation. So on the end user's machine, it will extract all the files it needs for 3D NPCs, for instance, into a temporary folder, pack them all into a BSA, and put the BSA into the Mod Organizer folder. So the third situation is where you've unpacked a BSA, done some modifications, and packed it back together. And that is a case that is just a combination of the other two, right? So by hooking those two pieces together in Wabbajack, it can actually detect when you've ripped apart a BSA, changed it, and put it back together. So we don't have to actually binary patch BSAs because we can kind of detect all of the transitions that those files have been through. Now, it even Wabbajack even supports binary patching of files inside those BSAs, right? So if you extracted the BSA, did a bunch of optimizations, fixed some textures, fixed some meshes, put it all back together, it will detect that, binary patch the files before recreating the BSA, and this all pretty much just works. I mean, there are ways this can fail, but thankfully the Skyrim community in general tends to keep with some fairly well-defined processes of what you need to do. You need to run optimization on these meshes. You need to optimize these textures, fix this ESP, that sort of thing, and those cases are all handled very well. In the creation, Wabbajack can also detect dummy ESPs. So CAO will sometimes create dummy ESPs. Wabbajack looks at ESPs in your install folder, and if they're really small, if they're less than 100 bytes and have a BSA with the same name as the ESP, those ESPs are assumed to be dummy ESPs, in which case it just includes them into the mod list itself. It ships the mod list without those ESPs. The one last thing I did want to discuss is, let's say you've created a patch, right? And you have a new folder here, create empty mod, and we'll say my patch. So you've gone and you've made a consistency patch, right? There's two ways you can handle this. If you're making a mod list and you have a consistency patch, you can, if it's a large file, what I recommend you do is zip it up and stick it in somewhere in Dropbox or something like that. We do support with that direct URL. Let's see. So we have the direct URL for the for SKSE. That direct URL we look at it and figure out if it's going to Mega or Dropbox or Google Drive or these places. And in each one of those situations, there's slightly different code that Wabbajack uses to access those. So if you've got a Mega link, it's going to load up the Mega client and do an official download of that file. In Dropbox we have several different ways of handling those main download sites. So that's one option. Zip it up, put it online, put the direct URL in the meta folder, and Wabbajack will find it. The other option is if it's a small enough file, what you can do is load it up, and there's this notes here, and you can do Wabbajack, I can't type and talk, include. And this can either go in the notes section here or down here in this section. I think it's comments, this is notes, either one of those. So what happens is when you do this and you save this, in fact, you can even, I think there's a way to show the notes here. Yeah. So if we do this, you'll see that this has Wabbajack include here now. So if we go into this folder and we open this in 7-zip, what you'll see is the comments. Oh, that is comments. Okay. The comments is Wabbajack include. If Wabbajack sees that in either the notes or the comments, that string Wabbajack _include all capitals, then it's just going to take the entire contents of that file and shove it into the mod list for beta. Now, yes, that can allow you to violate copyright, right? There's nothing stopping you from taking everything in your mod list and doing that, except it'll probably blow up because there's like, Wabbajack was not designed to do that. So don't do this for gigabytes worth of files. Do it for stuff you have rights to. I mean, it's on you if you don't, but you know. But in general, what it's for is consistency patches and that sort of thing. Little tweaks that you've made, things like that that you have rights to and you want to just give as part of the mod list. There we go. That's all the main features. So I guess right now what we can do is let's just close this, and we'll go through real quick the process of installing this, and we can see how this works. So we'll load up Wabbajack one last time, and we'll do this, and we'll hit begin. It's going to found a couple files real quick here. It's patching everything. All right, and it's done. It's done building the mod pack. Okay, so we're going to close this down, and now we have tutorial modlist.exe, and we're going to copy that, and we're going to go to /temp verify. Yeah, we're just going to delete everything here because this is an old verification, and we're just going to drop that right in here. So here's our mod list. Users will take this, they'll double click it, and all they really need to do is hit begin. It'll ask them for their Nexus API. It does require a premium Nexus subscription. I will authorize that on my other screen here. And then, as you see, it downloaded Mod Organizer, it downloaded Dynamic Equipment. Installation is now complete. We click Exit. If we go here, this is our Verify folder. We now have a Mod Organizer 2 here. We run this. They need to make sure they select Portable. They need to make sure they select the correct game. And click no, and boom, here we go. This looks exactly the same. It is, aside from log files and stuff, it is exactly the same as what they had before. And just to confirm, if we open this here, SKSE plugins, we'll do this. Look at that. Manage helmet is set to false, just like we wanted. Our patch is here. There wasn't anything else in there, but if it was, that would have been carried along. And the one last thing I wanted to show here is if we go to verify, we have this game folder files now. If we open this up, what do you know? Here are SKSE folders here, and that's fascinating. I don't know why. Oh, this is because there's some this Havoc post-process thing. Don't worry about it. Basically, Wabbajack found a way to create one of these game folder files from something that exists. I just need to make a rule for this and have this excluded. It's not a problem. So anyway, these are the files. They can just take this, copy it, paste it into their Skyrim directory, and boom, they're off to the races. All right, well, thank you so much for watching this video. It's been a long 34 minutes, but that's an overview of what Wabbajack does. It's extremely powerful tool, if I do say so myself. And you know, if, we have a Discord. It's on the GitHub page. Please stop by, talk to us if you have problems. I'd love to hear it, and you know, would love to see you join the community of people making awesome mod lists. So thank you.